so many resistors, so many activists, despite the weather. As you know, my name is Ana Lilia Mejia. I'm the Director of New Jersey Working Families. We have been focused, I'm going to keep it short and sweet because I really want to spend all of the time possible hearing from our amazing, illustrious panel that I have to pinch myself that they agreed to come and give us everything. No choice whatsoever. So my name is Ana Lilia Mejia. I'm the Director of New Jersey Working Families. Like many organizations, on that infamous Wednesday, we woke up and we're like, okay, we got to get to work. We have to stay informed. We have to stay active. We have to make sure that our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, our communities are protected, and that our values stay firm. We started doing a series of town halls, sometimes teletown halls, sometimes live streams, obviously this one an in-person town hall, where our mission is to have an opportunity to ask key questions to deciders, to decision makers, people who are in the know, who can help us better understand the fight in front of us. So tonight's event is essentially a resistance town hall where we have our amazing Congressman Frank Pallone, Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, and Speaker Shiela Oliver, who is the head of the Assembly Legislative Resistance Coalition that we formed with many activists to create a firewall in New Jersey as much as possible. So, I didn't say that because it's not political. Yes. So, everything is political, yes. All right, so I'm going to stay focused. We are excited about tonight's event. We're passing out index cards that we're asking folks to please fill in any questions that you would like to ask. Keep it short and sweet. We're going to hand them off to Louie, to Anne, and to James, who are all, of course, not in the room when I just called their name, and myself. We'll collect them, and we will try to get through as many questions as possible. Our objective, like we said, is to get an understanding from members of Congress and from our speaker, who are going to essentially what information, what do we need to understand that's coming out of Washington, D.C., what do we need to understand coming out of this administration in terms of environmental policy, healthcare policy, infrastructure, but the budget proposals, tax reform. There's a lot that we perhaps are missing because there's a whole lot of crazy that happens every single day coming out of DC, and it's almost impossible to keep up. So that is my brief introduction of the intention for tonight's event. But before we start, I want to hand it over to my resistance sister, Hetty Rosenstein from CWA, as well as the head of New Jersey Resistance. Hetty.
Hey, how you doing, brothers and sisters? Okay, so I'm going to be really brief because you're not here to see me, but I want to talk about a couple of things before we get started. So what makes this a resistance movement is that what is taking place and the fights that are taking place are in fact bottom up, side to side, top down, in every single way. In other words, we really, in spite of the fact that we have amazing people in Congress here, by the way, really putting up an extraordinary fight, which we'll talk about a bit. But the other thing is that the things that happen are not being led at the top. We saw very clearly the worst of it being in Charlottesville, that all over the place, people came together and decided they were going to do rallies, they were going to do unity events. They didn't wait for someone to come and tell them. People started to organize them on their own. Where's Jim? Jim, the badass from Bedminster, you know, created this entire movement around that golf course. And it's these kinds of actions that turn this into a movement, which means that movements are chaotic, they're crazy, you don't always know what's going on, sometimes people are moving quickly, sometimes they don't move quickly enough. It's a mess. That's just the way it is. If you want to know many of the events that are taking place, if you're not on my email list, send me an email to hettyr@njresistance.org, and I'll put you on my email list. You can also join the New Jersey Resistance on Facebook, and we post regularly events that are taking place. Very quickly, who knows who Parker Space is? Assemblyman Parker Space. If you don't know who Assemblyman Parker Space is, make sure you find out. You'll find his picture in front of the Confederate flag all over our Facebook pages today. This is New Jersey. This is in North Carolina. This is in Missouri, right? This is in Kentucky. It's not Durham. This is New Jersey. And Assemblyman Parker Space from the 24th Legislative District is very proud to be seen posing in front of a Confederate flag. And when
the flag said, if we would have won, if the South won, we would have had it made.
yeah. And when confronted with it, his answer was, kiss my butt. So we are going to kiss his butt by kicking his butt by supporting his opposition. And Kate Madison, Gina Trish are running for assembly in the 24th Legislative District. I encourage everybody to give them some money. That's the best way to kick Parker Space's butt, is to give them some money. So we'll start with that. You're going to be hearing about a bunch of town halls that Working Families is putting together, where we're going to be talking to either candidates or incumbents about the 100-day agenda that Phil Murphy has put out, which is as progressive an agenda for any gubernatorial candidate in the country and in New Jersey history. That is a fact. And we're going to be talking to Democrats about implementing that agenda and making sure that they're supporting it. So we want people to come out for that. You're going to be hearing more about that. Please call, you'll probably hear this from Bonnie, Congresswoman Bonnie, excuse me, that she has put forward a House resolution to censure Donald Trump around Charlottesville. All of the Democratic members of Congress, all of them are signed on. None of the Republicans in New Jersey are. You should, if you're from a Republican district, we want you to call them up and tell them to get on that. September 30th and October 1st, there'll be demonstrations against racism in this country all over. September 30th, there'll be Washington. October 1st, it'll be in many, many cities, including New York. I hope that people will come out for that. Finally, a lot of what we've got to be doing, in addition to preparing for 2017 and having kick-ass turnout in November, that message of 2017 is about 2018. And in 2018, we have to do what? We got to flip the house. We got to flip the house. I don't care what your politics are. We have to flip the house. We need 25 seats in order to do that. And here in New Jersey, we have the potential of flipping a few of them. I mean, certainly one possibility, and maybe two, and Donald Trump keeps up the way he is. Right, exactly. 3, 7, 11. That's a good start. Tom MacArthur. So we're going to be doing a lot of work on that, and part of our resistance work is going to be voter registration, voter engagement in preparation for 2018, and you'll see a lot more of that as we get closer to November this year, and then after November, we need, and we're going to need, money, 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 money. We can't really compete with the right wing, obviously. We can't compete with corporate forces. We never can. We run our organizations and the work we do on spit and string. So New Jersey Working Families, when I say spit and string, I'm generous. And so all of us have to be generous. Please support your resistance organizations, including this one, by becoming a sustaining member. And then I think I just want to put this out. We're working on finding a bad guy in terms of doing a national financial boycott. And it's very easy to do that we can come up with hundreds of bad guys, but we're looking for one in particular. We're working on this with the hedge clippers and really coming up with a corporate bad guy to launch a national boycott and to put the message out that Trump and Trumpism is bad for business. So we're working a lot more on that. Again, please participate in all of these activities as they come up. Contact us if you're not hearing from us about what activities are available. You can get on my email list, get on the Working Families email list. Please be generous with our organizations and kick ass, organize, and resist!
So, as I shared when we first started, the activists, the regular citizenry, New Jerseyans, people across this country have watched with shock, sometimes confusion, and many, frankly, sometimes just have to turn away because so much is coming out of the current administration. But we cannot afford to turn away because these are our families, these are our communities, these are our children, these are our livelihoods, our futures that are at stake. And so we saw it was very impressive, especially in New Jersey. And I want to shout out Debbie, I want to shout out a bunch of these Stand New Jersey, the Action Togethers, all these different, the We the Peoples, the Hunterdon County Progressive Dems, all of these organizations that tirelessly, New Jersey Citizen Action, Make the Road New Jersey, a bunch of organizations, Clean Water and Food and Water Watch, who camped out at GOP members' offices and made demands. Protected health care for millions of Americans and hundreds of thousands of New Jerseyans. It was impressive, and it's fair to say that fight was really won by efforts here in New Jersey because a lot of activists were able to get their GOP members of Congress to make the right decision. It was a huge fight. We were very happy to win for the day, for right now, but the fight continues. So the first question I wanted to hand to our panel, and I wanted to first kick it off to Congressman Pallone, because he played a key role. You were in the Commerce and Energy and Commerce Committee, and so you were at the front line watching this unfold. Could you start us off with, what are the lessons learned from that ACA fight? What should we replicate? What should we not do the same way? What would you advise resistors to do next go around and in all of these fights?
Well, thank you. Well, first let me thank New Jersey Working Families and all that you do. And I can certainly answer that question by reference to what you were doing, because you were out there every day, as were so many progressive groups in the last 6 months, fighting the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. I think the lesson is very clear, which is that if you have grassroots momentum and you explain to people, you know, what the progressive agenda really is, then you win. Now, I'm not saying we completely won, because who knows what, you know, crazy Trump is going to do when we come back. I mean, right now, I will tell you that the Republican leadership and the average Republican congressperson has no desire to go through this repeal again. They're done. They would very much like to work with us to try to improve upon the Affordable Care Act if they're given a chance. But we don't know. Trump may come back after Labor Day. We go back next Tuesday and say, well, we still got to repeal this. I don't think the ability is there to do it, but we still have to remain vigilant. But I would tell you, to answer the question a little more specifically, I saw the turnaround the night I was in the cloakroom, Bonnie, which is in the back of the House of Representatives, where we, you know, kind of sit or have a soda or something. When I was watching CNN, we were supposed to vote that day, but we didn't, if you remember. And I saw on the board the CNN correspondent going through the list of the items that were covered if you bought insurance under the Affordable Care Act, and how, you know, what was included under your basic plan. Because for years, I had been saying, you don't understand, in many ways, the most important thing about the Affordable Care Act was the Essential Benefits Plan. That you were not going to buy junk insurance, but you had a decent health care plan that included, you know, mental health care and maternity care and, you know, all these things that we kind of take for granted. They were selling policies before the Affordable Care Act, not in New Jersey, but in other places, that didn't include hospitalization. And people had no idea what was in the Affordable Care Act, what the essential benefit package was, what they were getting. And you, and I mean seriously, all of you, activists, progressives, were working feverishly to make people understand what they were going to lose, which they did not know, okay? And when they found out, you know, the numbers became 60, 70, 80% that did not want to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and that's when so many of the Republicans started to get, you know, scared and didn't want to vote for the repeal. So the lesson is, grassroots works. And, you know, people actually, 70 or 80% of the people agree with our agenda, our progressive agenda, on whatever the issue is. But they don't know it. First of all, they don't know what the agenda is. They don't believe that you know, Democrats or progressives would actually try to implement it. And so the answer is to do what you're doing, which is just get out there and tell everybody what they're going to lose and what we want to do to make their lives better, economically, environmentally, healthcare, whatever. Each of us
You're going
answer?
to have to share, yeah, you'll have to share.
Go ahead. What? No, I'm saying, well, the House repealed it, but, you know, they couldn't get the votes in the Senate. I mean, look, I agree with Bonnie. This was a very close call. But the question was, what do you do? What do we do? What do we do in the future? I mean, you need to do the same thing on everything. I want people to understand that you have the power. I guess that's that you have the power, you have the ability, and there's so much energy out there in the aftermath of Donald Trump. Unfortunately, you know, it took Donald Trump, but there's so much energy by all the progressive and independent groups. You energize us. I mean, you know, I get up in the morning and I say, am I really going to be able to effectuate what I want to do? And a lot of times I wonder if I can. But then when I hear people like you guys, I get all excited and I say, wow, I can do this. So, I don't know.
So, I guess when you say we should keep doing the same thing in upcoming fights, I want to ask you, Congresswoman, I know you've actually been, all of you have been paying close attention to all of the insanity. You took an extra step with some fellow members of Congress just recently with, remind me, it was Congresswoman Pramila J. Paul and Congressman Nadler to actually move to censure the president for his actions or lack of action. And that was, I mean, that was a bold step, a response to what we saw coming out of Charlottesville. I want you to speak a little bit about what you think are the next key big fights, not only on economic, social justice, racial justice issues, but also these policy ideas that seem to be, or these restructuring or proposals that are kind of sneaking in. Can you give us some insight?
Sorry, we have to share the mic.
First of all, let me just say that I thank you and I welcome this opportunity to be here. And you all give us tremendous encouragement when we see you come to these things. And I know sometimes we're preaching to the choir, but I hope what we do in preaching to your choir is the next time is to ask you to bring 5 people with you who haven't been here before. We do that in church. Come on, bring some family and friends in. And then I want to make sure that we diversify as much as possible. So I know if you're white, you got black friends, you got Arab friends, you got Latino friends. We're all in this boat together, and we need to show the diversity of this resistance. So people ask me a lot, like, what's on the what have we got to lose? What's on the table? You know, and I tell them, okay, what's on the table? A decent education, safe communities, equal jobs, equal pay, fair paycheck, a minimum wage, health care, safe communities with the Department of Justice now deciding it's going to militarize our police again, as if we didn't have tension already in our communities. Voting Rights Act is on the line again. A woman's right to choose is on the line again. You know, so everything we thought we won, every battle that we thought was fought, every piece of legislation that was passed to guarantee certain rights or codified by the courts, every bit of it, they're trying to undermine, to do away with administratively, to do things other than legislation, because they can't get legislation passed of any consequence. I mean, they've really not gotten any major legislation passed, and that's because we do have some decent-minded Republicans who are just not going to be pulled down that trail. Now, I'm on Homeland Security, so I've been offended by the money that the Secret Service has had to spend to protect Eric and the rest of the Trump vets for going around building the businesses, the Trump brand, and putting that money into the president's pockets because he's not divested of these interests. So I did a resolution of inquiry which says we want to see every doggone cent that's been spent just traipsing around the world, either on vacation or building the Trump brand with the Secret Service. So when that was defeated in committee, as we expected it would, then I introduced a piece of legislation that says you can't do it. You cannot put any money in the president's pocket by protecting his family members while they're going around building the Trump brand when they're not doing that which is in the interest of our security. So I'm sure that's going to get defeated as well. But the thing is that you got it, when you're in a minority, you got to use every tool, every opportunity, every little tiny thing that someone finds, some little obscure thing that they find that you can do, to just put it out there so that you're informing people, because you are being educated, and you're being educated, you have been aroused, you're committed. You have stood fast through good weather, bad weather, when things didn't look like they were going your way, when things thought, well, maybe they are going our way because we defeated the health care bill the first time, and then the second time they come back and whammy. So what do you expect when you go back to Washington? You expect them to try any and everything. You don't know what to expect. So this last experience with Charlottesville, I think was an opportunity to see the inside out Donald Trump. Because when he spoke without having a note card or a teleprompter, he told you what he thought. Now, he doesn't have the capacity of thinking very high. In fact, his thinking is very low. But he bared himself. Now, his grandchildren are Jewish. You know, and the Nazis killed the Jewish communities. So how could you possibly say they're good Nazis? Neo-Nazi, old Nazi, any Nazi. You know, how can you say that there are good Confederates, old Confederates, neo-Confederates, or whatever Confederates, when they're responsible for lynching people that look like me? And how can you possibly think that there's one good white supremacist when their sole reason for being was to destroy people of color and poor people and other people? So we know that he's off the charts, off the chain, and just absolutely without any moral fiber. So, Jerry Nadler, no, let me just start with Hetty and James G. and Anna Lilia. James G. from my office, we've been talking about using every tool we can. What can we do to like raise the bar here? And came up with, let's do this resolution to censure the president and how poorly he handled the Charlottesville issue and how un-American, undemocratic, and unpresidential it was. And I know I make ugly faces when I talk about him, because that's basically the way I'm feeling. And because we did not want anyone to think that anyone was being left out of this very hateful moment, we reached out to Jerry Nadler as a representative of another community, and Pramila Jayapal as a representative of another community. Because the one thing that we know, maybe certain people are focusing on certain communities, but that movement, that white supremacist, neo-Nazi, neo-Confederate movement, is all about every ism and every phobia. So they don't like us if we have a infirmity. They don't like us if we're women. They don't like us if we're minorities. They don't like us if we're of a different religion. They don't like us if we belong to the LGBT community. They don't like anybody that's not like them. And so by having these additional members on was a way of broadening our focus as we thought about just how awful what was happening in Charlottesville and what was being represented there really is. So we introduced this resolution to censure the president. We have 140 some signatures on it already. We thought that it was a very modest thing to introduce because he's not going to lose his job. He's not going to go to jail. You know, he's not going to need to be pardoned and all that kind of stuff. It's just Congress on the record saying that this is unacceptable coming from the President of the United States. This is not who we are. And we thought that perhaps some Republicans could sign on to it because it really wasn't that big of a deal. But we're finding that even those Republicans that tweet don't have the courage to sign this resolution. And so we need you all and everybody you talk to and connected to state by state by state to have your people talk to people who are not on this resolution. That's the least they can do. Because that just simply says that we're above this, we're higher than this. This is not who we are as Americans. And that we need you to stay strong, stay engaged, don't get discouraged. This may not be the short haul, but at the end of the day, this may be hokey, but honest to God, to the core of my heart, I believe this government is up by and for the people. And when the people show up, things happen differently. And so I thank you all for the willingness to show up.
That's right. So we have been waging this fight, obviously at the federal level, doing everything we can, and I just want to, again, just reiterate, shout out, these are amazing members of Congress. Bonnie Watson Coleman, whenever we call her and say, you know, can we do this fight? Can we try this? Can we say that? Will you come here? I mean, just last night in Flemington, I had the pleasure to be with the Congresswoman. She never says no, to the point where her staff are like, please stop asking her. Another woman who, I have to share this story. I sent her, I'm notorious for texting people to ask them to do stuff. And I sent her a text message a few months ago saying, we're seeing all of this insanity coming out of the federal government. There has to be a way that we can create a firewall in New Jersey where if they say this is allowed, this dangerous chemical is now allowed in our farms and to grow our food, then maybe there's a way to keep it banned in New Jersey. Like, can we do that? A resistance caucus. And her response was, you had me at resistance? I am a resistance kind of girl. I was like, oh, I love Shiela Oliver. So our Speaker Emeritus joined Senator Loretta Weinberg and put together the resistance, essentially it's a resistance caucus in the New Jersey legislature, in the Assembly and Senate. A hand for that. And we're working very hard to recruit additional members. So go to your member of Assembly and your member of Senate and say, are you part of the resistance caucus? You need to be. You need to join. Because the idea here is, can we create a legislative firewall within our state? We know we can't, save the entire union in one fell swoop, but we could do it grain by grain, piece by piece, legislation by legislation. New Jersey can lead the way, and at the forefront of that is Speaker Emeritus Shiela Oliver. And so the question for you, before we hand it over to all, I just needed to give you that shout out, is, what can we do? We're looking at the state, we're looking at, obviously we can move legislation at the local level and at the state level, but what can we do to agitate Republican members, Republican members of Assembly, Republican members of the Senate, to agitate and mobilize Republican members of Congress? Because they all talk, they all know each other. What can we do as activists at the local level, at the state level?
I'll respond to that. And I just want to echo Congressman Pallone and Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman in thanking Working Families Alliance and Hetty, Equality, Rosenstein, and everyone else for, always stepping up, and for you being here this evening. I mean, it is tremendous to look out across this room and see the faces of people who care about government. So Annalilia raises the issue, what do you do? And I have to echo the Congress people. Your participation through the grassroots organizations is really what shut the ACA repeal down. It was your participation. And I am reminded at the last, the DNC convention prior to Philadelphia, I remember Senator Cory Booker giving out rocks. Remember when we used to have those pet rocks? He gave out rocks, and engraved in the rock was, democracy is a participatory sport. And I have often said, you always get what you always got if you don't change the way you operate. You'll always get what you always got. And for too long, in New Jersey, we've gotten what's been handed to us, first of all, because the people in New Jersey do not vote. That's numero uno. We would not have the number of Republican legislators in some districts if people would mobilize, organize, and vote. We would not have them. And Hetty made reference that there are some legislative districts where The people who think like us are running rigorous campaigns trying to flip those seats. Now, let's get back to Anna Lilia's question of me. I learned in my 13 and a half years in the state legislature that on the other side of the aisle, there are very few red badges of courage. And that's just a fact. That's a fact. There's nothing I could sit here tonight and say to you that would influence them changing their minds. But we're very friendly in the State House, and Bonnie is a former Assemblywoman, and she knows this as well. As Democrats on the progressive side of the aisle, we have many friends on the other side of the aisle, and I do. And they will tell me confidentially, they wish they could stand up, they agree with me 100%, they know that that's the right thing to do, but they are timid and they will not stand up. Until citizens in this state begin to hold them accountable for their actions, I'm afraid, Anna Lilia, you'll never shame them into doing the right thing. How you will shame them is if you go to the ballot box and begin to defeat them. That is the message that Rodney Frelinghuysen is getting. That is the message Tom MacArthur is getting. That is the message that Leonard Lance is getting. But we have to begin to replicate that same sort of mobilization and organization at the state level. That's what we have to do. And, you know, I somehow am thinking about a legislator up in the northwest corner of Bergen County who is an attorney, and she generally represents big developers. And she introduced a bill with an innocuous name that sounds like she's in support of the creation of affordable housing. But that is not what her intent is. Her intent is to try to shut down the Supreme Court's decision that we have an obligation to create affordable housing for people in this state. But if no one holds her publicly accountable for her efforts, she will try to maneuver throughout her Republican caucus to address the issue. But the problem gets to be the lack of participation of voters. 25% of the registered voters in New Jersey, on average, come out to the polls to vote in presidential elections and in gubernatorial elections. It's shameful to me that in some of our local communities, you can win a school board election with 180 votes. In my legislative district, I can see towns where you can get elected to the town council with 315 votes. We are not promoting representative government in New Jersey if the citizens of New Jersey do not vote. So I don't think the issue or the question gets to be, how do we shame Republican legislators into standing up for financing and support of Planned Parenthood, shaming them into financial aid, reconfiguration in higher education, holding them accountable to homestead rebates for older people in this state. Last year in our budget, there was an appropriation of close to $300 million for homestead rebates. We just passed a budget in New Jersey with $147 million for homestead rebates. That means some of the most vulnerable people in this state will get no help with their property taxes. So, Anna Lilia, I am not of the opinion that we try to shame or influence Republicans to stand up and do the right thing. I am a resistor that says, vote them out.
All right, and so now I'm going to open, and folks, if you have additional questions, please make sure to start handing them or hand them over to Louis. So I'm going to just read these out, and whomever wants to take first stab wins. Will the Republicans be able to undermine the ACA, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid in the upcoming budget and future budgets? And I'm going to add, and how do we fight back or fight against?
Bonnie says that's me. I don't know. Well, let me say this about the budget process, and I don't want to sound like a bureaucrat, but you know, the budget at the federal level is not like the budget at the state level. It's just a plan, right? So when the president, like Trump, puts out a budget, that's his suggestion to Congress about what the budget should be. And then the Congress has the option of passing a budget, which still is just a plan, right? House and Senate passes it. President doesn't even go to the president's desk because it's not binding on anyone. Well, so far the Republicans, Bonnie and I were talking, haven't done that this year, right? That's not highly unusual, but it happens. It doesn't look like they're going to do a budget. So when President Trump says, you know, budget that's slashing the EPA by a third, or the State Department by a third, or transportation by 20%, whatever, I mean, it's been largely ignored because the Republicans can't get their act together because the Tea Party, real right wing, 40, 50 members of their caucus, really won't vote for anything unless you're going to spend more money on the military. They'll vote for that. That's it, right? So what we suspect is going to happen, and what did happen, because for the first 6 months of the year, we were operating under a spending bill that was enacted under President Obama, right? And that went till April 30th. The next 6 months, from April 30th to October 1st, they couldn't get their act together, so they had to come back to the Democrats, and we passed a spending bill for the 6 months that was actually pretty good. I mean, it wasn't progressive because we needed their votes, but instead of a 30% cut in EPA, it was a 1% cut in EPA. I don't want to give you the wrong impression. We're not moving forward. We're preventing worse things from happening, okay? We suspect the same thing is going to happen after Labor Day. In other words, they haven't been able to pass a spending bill. They passed one for the military and Homeland Security in the House, but it won't get 60 votes in the Senate. So we suspect they're going to come back to us, and they're going to say, well, we can't pass anything, the right wing won't do it, what do you want to do? And we'll put together a package, which again is not progressive, but is at least not making things that much worse. I guess that's the best way to put it. And so I think that that bill will not have, you know, the vouchers for Medicare or the block grants for Medicaid or repeal the Affordable Care Act. We're hoping that with the Affordable Care Act that we can move ahead and do some positive things to make it better. That probably wouldn't be part of the budget. So, you know, again, it's very important though to speak out. I mean, look, there's been a tremendous amount of opposition to Trump's budget. And I could tell people, well, that's dead on arrival, which is true. But I don't, because I think you've got to say, this guy's nuts. This guy is tearing apart the social framework of the country. This guy's destroying the EPA. All he wants to do is increase the military, because then, at least when we do come together, hopefully, you know, nobody is willing to support Trump's budget. The Republicans, except for the Tea Party right wing, don't want to support his budget. And again, a lot of that is because of the outrage that has been from grassroots organizations like yourselves, frankly. So once again, same answer, do your thing.
So I'm going to ask another budget question. Does the Republican, here's what on face value may be simple, but please educate us. Does the Republican tax reform actually mean just tax cuts for the wealthy? And doesn't this, in effect, just add to our deficit? Can't hear you.
Well, we don't really know what the proposed tax reform bill will be because they're not able to get their act together. We assume certain things that the tax reform will make it better for very, very, very wealthy people. Pardon me?
It's not a reform.
Exactly. So we don't have any hope that when they get a chance to come together and propose something, that it will be the kind of reform we need, which is to do something earned income tax credit, middle class salary, breaks and things of that nature, small businesses. So we don't know what to expect from them. We don't actually, you know, with Harvey and everything else happening, we don't know what to expect about anything right now.
But I would just add this, because you kind of asked the process question too a little bit, right? You know, the only thing we've heard really is he wants to reduce the corporate tax rate, you know, from 30-something to 15, like basically half of what it is. And what Bonnie is saying, if I, you know, is that, look, if you want to come to us and come up with a real tax reform that's going to help the middle class and the little guy, we'll consider it. But they don't come up with that, right? I mean, I have to tell you, I just got really upset because I went to a meeting and we were with some energy executives, because my committee deals with energy issues, right? And one of the energy execs, I can't mention his name because some of you will know who he is. He came up to me and he said, you know, Congressman, why are you so much against Trump's tax reform? And I said, just what you said. I said, what tax reform? He said, well, we just want to reduce the corporate tax rate. I said, well, what about helping the average person, the middle class? He says, why would I want to do that? I mean, that's the attitude. It's an awful attitude.
You have to tell us who it is. That's that actor. So given this, what is our best chance for getting a sane budget and maybe getting? Oh man, I'm looking at your face, Bonnie. Do we have a chance of getting a sane budget? Is there, another question here is, you know, is there any chance in the upcoming budget to expand Pell Grants or to improve college affordability or any of these priorities?
What we're trying to do, I mean, it's an awful task, right, is prevent things from getting worse. We are not really moving in a progressive way with this Congress. I mean, it goes back to what Sheila said. They're not going to do anything progressive. Unless you're going to have to throw them out.
They're not going to have a budget either. We're going to have an interim spending bill. We're going to have an ability to get through 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is that the time frame will be, and just kick the can down the road. So it's
something I want to add that I was thinking about as the Congress people were speaking. If you can think back to the Trump entertainment campaign when he was running for president, he spent a great deal of time talking about how he was going to, quote, bring jobs back to this country. And I am certain that if he was serious about tax reform, part of what that proposal would be when they begin to create it would be to work with some of the international companies that are based right here in the United States in working with both sides of the aisle, coming up with tax policies that would encourage some job creation in this country. But remember all of the drama around the Carrier air conditioner company and how many jobs were saved? Well, you know that within 90 days, Carrier shut those jobs down. I think that whatever they come up with, Congresswoman Watson Coleman and Congressman Pallone, we need to be very vocal that whatever they come up with does not provide a safe landing for U.S.-based companies that take their assets and their profits and take them offshore. I don't know about you, and I'm not being very discriminatory, but for the life of me, I don't understand why when I call the AT&T helpline or when I call the Verizon helpline, people who live in the United States can't have those jobs. So I believe that if we're going to fight around budget, let's pay attention when they come up with this tax reform proposal that we aren't making it even more convenient for corporate America to not do business on our shores and invest their profit on our shores. Because Our president, with his business interests all around the world, let us pay close attention to the announcement he made the other night about Afghanistan. And in the same breath, he talked about Wilbur Ross being his envoy to begin to mine emeralds from Afghanistan. They are going to consistently combine public policy and national policy with their business interests. So let's be clear. Bonnie and Frank said it best. They don't care. They don't want to compromise. They are on a mission. You know, Maya Angelou said it best. When somebody shows you who they are, believe them. That is what we are dealing with. That's what we're dealing with. These are not good people. They are not nice guys. They are not people interested in working with progressives or moderate Democrats. They are hell-bent on driving a ramrod through this country based on divisiveness around race, ethnicity, and income, and religion. And if we don't stand up and just shut them down, we're going to be in receipt of what we deserve. Yesterday, I saw film footage for the very first time. Oh no, no bad people in Charlottesville. I saw film footage of a man from Baltimore, Maryland, who is the chair of the Klan, and he pulled out a pistol on that campus and fired it several times. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we are dealing with. There is a foul mood permeating this country, and if we don't build a resistant movement, many of us are going to be shipped right up out of here. That is what we are fighting. Believe it when they show you who they are. Iron up.
Sheila got me all excited. I just wanted to prove, if I could, one point quickly about why Sheila's right. Now, if you were Donald Trump, God help us, and you were elected president and took office in January, and you wanted to talk about the economy and creating jobs, what would be the first thing that you would do? And that is infrastructure, right? He talked about in the campaign how he wanted $1 trillion infrastructure plan. I'm telling you, if that man had gotten to Congress on the first day and had a press conference and said, I want Democrats and Republicans to get together and spend $1 trillion in federal dollars on infrastructure, highways, safe drinking water. I'm looking around the room. The carpenters, the building trades, they would have been standing up saying hallelujah, right? And we would have all joined in. But he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't talk about it at all. He had one press conference on infrastructure, right? Which was a couple weeks ago when he was talking about reforming regulations and that was going to create infrastructure without any money. And then that was when that deteriorated into talking about how both sides were equal at Charlottesville. Sheila's right. I mean, there have been so many opportunities, whether it's the infrastructure bill, a tax bill, healthcare, where he could have brought us together and gotten the Democrats and Republicans together to do something that was meaningful, and he just won't do it.
Can I get something else off my chest?
You really gotta let loose. You really gotta cut loose here.
Yeah. New Jersey sits in the highest cost housing market in the country. We belong to Region 2 of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. We need to call Trump out for appointing a party planner as the head of the regional office of HUD. It affects us directly as the state of New Jersey. But when these things occur, yeah, we do postings on social media and, we may write a letter to the editor. We have to begin to have a groundswell against things that affect us. Because I'm going to tell you, the appointment of a party planner as the HUD Region 2 commissioner, it's going to have deleterious effect on the state of New Jersey.
So I want to ask, I want to first, actually, both members of Congress are on this Millions of Jobs Coalition, and there are 10 core principles that several members of Congress have signed on to that they believe demand should be part of any infrastructure spending. We have the core principles here. Do you want to speak a little bit more about it? Okay. So
We sign on to a lot of things that come out of.
it's good though, it's good. Me and Karen talked about it, it was all right. But these are 10 core principles that would ensure whatever infrastructure bill moves in Congress actually supports workers, creates jobs, and doesn't just attempt to take away regulations, which, as the congressman said, the only thing on infrastructure that the president has tried to do is fast track the ability for projects to get done, which, by the way, to make it easier to, which inevitably will hurt the environment, because a lot of the checks and balances or ensuring that projects don't hurt water tables or drinking water or the environment, it would be skipped. That's the only thing that we did. So the only members of Congress who are signed on to this million jobs is Congressman Gottheimer, which, shout out to the great Hetty for making that happen. Our two illustrious members of Congress sitting before you are on that, and Congressman Donald Norcross. 4. We need Pascrell, we need Anibio Series, we need every member of the GOP. What?
I mean, the one Republican I would try to get is
Lobiando. So that's job number 1 that you're getting out of tonight is call your member of Congress and demand they sign on to the million jobs, 10 principles, 10 core principles that any infrastructure bill or legislation must include if they are going to support it. Are you with me?
Yeah, Lily, I would think that you don't have to call and demand it from Pascrell and Albio and who else. I think being on a recess right now, everybody's kind of like everywhere, some are on Cordell, you just need to tell them.
I think
what-
that's right. I
Yeah.
think we just need to follow up.
Let them know that this is.
Yeah, the demand was to GOP, sorry.
Yeah.
I think we really gotta push the GOP. I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't
That's all right.
interrupt you, but I want to get back to the issue about shaming. I don't think you can shame them. I think you can try to corner them. So, right, which is what we did on healthcare, and I think we should try as much as possible in this, because they now are trying to figure out how to separate themselves from Trump, and we should try that. And I just feel on the state level, I want to corner Tom Keenan and John Brennan. What's your position on it, and why aren't you telling Leonard Lance who you're next door to? And I just feel like that's the way to do it. It's like call them on it and hold them responsible for not getting these Republicans. What's that? It doesn't work, but I just feel like that's what we should do and just trash them like crazy. I mean, the Affordable Care Act stuff. It was amazing what happened, but in truth, it wasn't that many people. It didn't actually take 100,000 people. It took 20,000 individuals to get these folks, right? I mean, it was going to their office every single Wednesday, doing those vigils and having them get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calls. But I don't think they got hundreds of thousands. I think they got 20,000. And I think that you're not used to getting by.
So I want to circle back to this, it was mentioned, there's a lot coming out of the administration, but a lot of it is just smoke and mirrors, and the president tends to, a lot of stuff is getting snuck by. Like, Speaker, you had mentioned that, in the same breath, he was talking about one issue and sneaking in another. And there's a bunch of stuff that's coming out, both legislative, regulatory, and then just like executive orders that are coming out. Everything from transgender individuals in our militaries to now saying he's going to repeal DACA and put many youth who put their trust and faith in the government, in a process, in growing in this nation at terrible peril. What else is happening that sometimes we don't even notice? Can each of you actually give us information?
Well,
I just want to raise an issue, and I think our congresspeople can perhaps give us guidance. This man, this week, has repeatedly said, if he doesn't get a wall out of his budget, he's shutting government down. I want to ask our congressional rep, should we begin to prepare to mobilize around that issue?
well, he's kind of trying to walk away a little bit from that, saying that, one way or the other, they're going to get one at some point, and Mexico's trying to pay for it, and now we have this very bad storm in Texas, which is going to make it a little bit more difficult for him to maneuver. But I think that we should act like it's real, because in his mind, it is real, even though Republicans are saying, no, he's not going to get a wall. He's not going to get the funding for a wall. So we should assume that that's on his agenda. He's going to push till he gets it. And the one thing that I think I know is that I don't know what to expect from Republicans, because there's some decent people down there. And when you see them get dragged into his awful, terrible, sort of dirty den, you're wondering, how did you let someone drag you there? I have, remember people who live in the apartment building that I have to live in down there? That I have to pay for, because, I want you to know, there's no MRA, and I'm not Paul Ryan, I don't live in my office. But there are people that are Republican that live in my building, so you get to know them a little bit. One of them was so depressed one night. He was like, I'm so down, I'm so depressed, it's so disgusting. We should have involved the Democrats from the very beginning. This is about the health care bill. I just feel that we're just downtrodden and demeaned, but they don't say anything. But I am telling you that personally, they are feeling it. And so we need to keep the heat on them. Because, yeah, he's really dragging them through the mud. And, MSNBC, they got the same guys that beat the heck out of us as Democrats during the primary and even during the Obama administration. These Republican strategists, they talk dirt about this president. They talk about him in ways that the Democrats don't even talk about him. So you know that there's this sense of despair that is going on among Democrats. Let me just say this, Eddie. I'm kind of with Sheila. You can't shame them. You didn't just corner them. You showed live bodies and told them, you see us? We stand for people who vote. We will mobilize. We will register. We'll bring people to vote that you didn't even know were in the cornfields in Hunterdon County. That's what they react to. They weren't cornered. They're scared. Including Rodney Frelinghuysen is scared because they don't really know how many sane people still live in their districts. Because sane people, even Republicans, know that what's going on in D.C. is insane. And so there's always a possibility of getting those 25 seats. But the only way we're going to get these 25 seats is for you to stay strong, stay committed, grow, get other folks involved, and when Hetty or Anna Lilia or any one of us say show up, please show up. Please just show up, because the sheer numbers overwhelm them.
I just want to say that Randy Bryce, who is running against Paul Ryan, just liked this live stream on Facebook.
wanted to say, I'm not sure I like this picture of Bonnie working in her office late and having some Republican who sleeps in his office in his pajamas wander into her office because he's depressed. I'm sorry.
That was great, that was great.
Ryan lives
Oh,
in
Paul Ryan, okay. But can I just say one thing? Again, I don't want to make it just a process thing, but I do believe, with regard to your question, Sheila, as Bonnie said, the Republicans, they're not going to have the votes for this spending bill with the wall. There's no way, right? And so they're going to have to come back to us, and I think what's likely, the likely scenario is the wall's going to be dropped because they need our votes. So that's hopefully what will happen. But I did want to say, the problem with the, going back to that question, the problem that we face is that, remember, for 6 of the 8 years when Obama was president, we had a Republican Congress, right? So most of what was done by President Obama that was progressive was done by executive order, unfortunately. DACA, the prohibition on oil drilling, 90% of it was done by executive order. So the problem is, now Trump is going to try to reverse all of that. I think he's got some kind of a problem where he just wants to make sure that everything that Obama ever did, he reverses, right? And you can take court action and try to maybe sue over some of these things, but that's the basic problem is, he can't really do anything legislatively because the Republican leadership hates him because he attacks them every day. But he can do all these things by executive order because, those were mostly done by Obama, and he just can reverse them. That's the problem we face.
So can we have a discussion at some point about this administration and social justice issues? And can we please have that conversation? Did anybody ask that question?
I'm sorry, ma'am, you can have any conversation you want to have, let's go.
Well, it just seems to me that, what happened in Charlottesville is just sort of an illustration of just how ugly things can be. But if you don't have a government that is willing to stand up and protect the rights of individuals that are being challenged by these right-wing nuts, then, we're in big trouble. So we have a president and God, I can't even say what he is, Attorney General, Beauregard, essentially. If they want to privatize prisons, what does that mean? That means that that's money. That's an industry, it's a cottage industry. They want to make sure that they're building these facilities, and if you build these facilities, you got to use them, right? So they want mandatory minimums. They want hardline law enforcement on nonviolent drugs. They're taking us back to an era that President Barack Obama tried to take us forward on. They're taking us into an era where you can be black and you can be brown, you can be female, you can be male, you can be driving and you can be stopped and you could be in real trouble because they're not holding even law enforcement accountable. And that's not an indictment on law enforcement because law enforcement basically protects us and preserves our rights. But this administration cares not one thing about me as a black woman or a black man or a Muslim, or a Sikh, or an Arab. This administration does not care if our rights are being trounced upon. And we have an Attorney General who is going to use the power of his office to diminish and to neuter the civil rights offices and their authorities and their resources. So they're doing these things by executive order. They're not hiring people, they're not enforcing laws. They're making decisions administratively what they will or will not enforce. So it's really, really important, I think, for us to use our social media, in particular, and our conversations, to educate one another on what's going on, because this is a very, very dangerous period. This is worse than we thought it could be. I was in Tunica, Mississippi, in a policy conference, and Reverend Barber spoke to us, and he started out, yes indeed. I told him, I said, God sends us a voice every generation, and you're that voice right now, so be healthy. So he started out by listing 12 issues, you know, creating the media as the enemy, identifying people that are enemies, suppressing the administration, you know, just a whole list of 12 things. He said, and you got those things, and I've written them down because I can't remember anything. He said, well, fine. And as he was itemizing these things, I'm thinking, oh Jesus, they're doing that. Then they just did this, they're doing this. He said, those are the 12 characteristics of fascism. So, you know, we think we're rock solid. We're America. Ain't nobody better than us, right? We're a democracy in one of the youngest countries in the whole wide world. And this democracy is being dismantled piece by piece, even with Bannon gone. Bannon's not the problem. Donald Trump is the problem. He has no more investment in this being a democratic government or representative government than the man in the moon. And so we have to keep people alerted. We have to tell them this is real. This is not some theoretical. This is not something you're reading or just seeing. You can't even script this. This is what is happening, and the rights of individuals who traditionally in our society have the least voice, and that's even women. Even women in 2017 are under attack in this administration. So we're all in this together, and we need to be growing by leaps and bounds and getting others who can understand that if they're not after you today, they're going to come get you tomorrow, but they're after your neighbor right now.
So, Congresswoman, Congressman, and speakers, you had made mention there's a bunch of disasters that are moving through regulations, not through the legislative process. Just want to flag, the ban on transgender people, deregulations on the environment, deregulations in health and safety, this issue of essentially militarizing our police forces. What can we do? I know you said, we got to keep on social media, but what else can we do, both at the federal level, but also at the state level, to kind of hold some grounds? Because it sounds like it's triage. It's not moving forward. It's triage, prevent the bleeding. What can we do?
Let me tell you what I think that is the most important thing for us to do, and that's at the local level, and that is register people to vote.
Yeah.
That is organized voter registration campaign, so that at the end of the day, the change is going to take place at the ballot. So if we really want to see, if we really say we're grassroots, then we got to get down to the most fundamental thing that there is, and that is the right to vote. So in the supermarkets and in the schools and in the workplace and, hanging out at the bars and in the mosque and churches and every place else, make sure everybody that you touch is registered to vote. And if they don't understand why, maybe, I don't know, Hetty, y'all are good at this. Maybe you need to have 10 reasons why. Here's the threat to not being a participant in this democracy. And so when people give you some slack and some lip about my vote doesn't count or I don't want to deal with this, give it to them. Because I don't think they completely understand how dangerous this administration with this Congress that has no courage is to our well-being and our future.
I don't want to take away from what Bonnie and Sheila said about, getting out and vote, registering people. I mean, there's no question that that's the most important thing because, the Republicans and the right wing are going to try to justify all these things. And, I don't know how much ability we have to actually tear that down and explain it in common sense terms. But I do think that, you should try to explain that, that these pronouncements or, regulations really don't make any sense. I mean, I'll just say, like, what you mentioned with the militarization, right? I know that in my district, there are towns and mayors, some Democrat, who love to take all this weaponry, right? You go, what is it that we went to recently? National Night Out, right? I went to National Night Out, and in some of my towns, I'm not going to get into names again because some of them are Democrats, where, they had like all this stuff laid out. I went to one of the towns and they had the Hummers and the machine guns. Well, not maybe they weren't machine guns, but all this military stuff from Iraq and Afghanistan all laid out. The police would say, "Oh, Congressman, come on, I want to show you, we've got all these guns and we've got Hummers." And I'm like, well, what are you using it for? I mean, I didn't want to be like disrespectful, but I was like, what are you using this for? And they said, oh, we're using it for the emergency, in case there's another storm like Sandy. And I said, you're going to use machine guns and Sandy? What are you shooting, the waves? So I think we have to kind of explain that this is ridiculous. You don't need this stuff. This stuff was made for war. This isn't made for, when the next storm comes. It's not even practical. And the same thing with the transgender. I mean, there wasn't a single, every one of the generals on the Joint Chiefs of Staff was against this. Nobody in the military even knew he was going to do it, right? And it makes absolutely no sense. Why are you going to eliminate a significant number of the people that want to fight for your country and your freedoms just because of their, sexual orientation, whatever? I will give you an example. This example, we went on a Codell to, it was like a polar expedition. The Republicans were in charge of any trips we take because they're in the majority. So the chairman of my committee decided he wanted to go on a polar expedition. And I didn't want to go. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit. But he wanted to go to all these places around the North Pole, and I didn't want to go. And my chief of staff said, you have to go because no Democrat will go. And if no Democrat goes, it looks bad. So I went for it. And I won't even tell you where we went. But I remember specifically, we were in Sweden, right? And we were with the general, I guess one of the chief generals, right? And one of the Republicans from Florida literally asked the question about transgender. This was in the military. This was before Trump came out with his pronouncement, his tweet. And this guy asked, he was from Florida, he said, what do you, we have this debate in the United States about transgender in the military, and, what is your opinion? What do you do in Sweden? And this guy looked like one of these Vikings. I mean, he was huge, right? Big, tough guy. And he looked at him straight in the eye and he said, well, what do you mean? Well, what's the problem? And he said, and so the Republican said, well, it's tough because, you have to have separate dorms and separate bathrooms, and, went on to some of the kind of crap that Trump or others put out. And the general looked right back at me and he said, well, we don't have any of those problems. And the Congress said, well, why not? He said, well, we don't have, everybody sleeps in the same dorm. We don't have dorms, men versus women, separate bathrooms for women, men. The dorms are co-ed. People are wherever they want. The bathrooms are used by everybody. It's not an issue. There's no issue, right? And it's just like, it just dawned on me how, backward the thinking is, that we start talking about the infrastructure. What are we doing? So I'm just trying to say, I think you just have to, I know, I agree with you. Get people to register, get people to vote. It's going to be tough to go into all these things. But I do think that if you can explain these things in a common sense way, none of these things that they do, that Trump does, which are all, based on craziness or ideology or I don't know what, they don't really make any rational sense. And that's why we were so successful, maybe barely, with the Affordable Care Act. When people started to actually be able to think about what he's doing and what the Republicans are trying to do, it makes no sense. So, I do think there's some value in trying to argue these things, not all the time, but at least you try, right?
I want to comment.
So he may not be successful in getting a lot of legislation passed. But let me just tell you that some of his executive orders are very dangerous. He's proposing an executive order right now which will shrink the boundaries of the national parks. And the purpose in doing that is not because he's insane, it is to give people a chance to mine and make money. He has, through executive order, he's loosened the EPA authority to enforce the Water Act and the Air Act. It's not insanity, it's so that people can make money. So he's sly and stupid like a fox. You know, don't ever think he doesn't know what he's doing. He knows what he's doing, and he's also benefiting. Now, I don't know if you heard this, but when he was running off of his mouth saying those vile things about everyone was equally bad and equally good in Charlottesville, he said, I like Charlottesville. I own a big house in Charlottesville. I own a winery. That's another illustration of what he shouldn't be doing. He shouldn't be owning any kind of a business. You know, so... Pardon?
At least not telling us all about it.
He ought not be owning it. And the other thing is that, this is, when he put his tweet out about transgenders not being able to serve in the military, his general said, that was an act of insubordination. But it was from every one of them. He couldn't do a damn thing about it. But the thing that scares me is that the people who may have the power to sit him down represent the military. And I'll be damned, this is not a military state, not the United States of America. And so that's why we have to continue to do our job. We don't concede this to anybody other than the citizens, not the military.
May I ask?
I just want to comment on, because part of what we want to do is, how do New Jersey state legislators protect the people in New Jersey when we have these insane things happening? So I want to point to the military equipment. We did pass a law, and Christie did sign legislation that prohibits local police departments from acquiring and using that whole laundry list of crazy equipment and tanks and assault rifles that have no business in a municipal police department. So we did pass that law in New Jersey. To give you another example, because I think part of what the quote resistance caucus in the state legislature wants to do, utilize the tools, as Assemblywoman Watson Coleman said, available to us. Essential benefits. There are legislators in anticipation of the repeal introduced bills that would prohibit insurance companies who are licensed to write policies in New Jersey. You could not underwrite a policy in New Jersey without essential benefits. So those are the kinds of things, and the yin and yang of what we are going to have to begin to do as a state legislature to, to counter some of the harmful things that could come out. When he does the issue of mining, and then we have to protect our own water and our own air here. We have to bring to task companies that think because they have federal license to do certain things, we have to somehow offset that by things we do in New Jersey. That is the way we protect our citizens until we get rid of Donald Trump.
So I have at least 3 people asking a version of this question. How bad does it have to get before Congress does their constitutional duty and move articles of impeachment and get rid of him? How bad do you think it really has to get?
Well, look, I'll be honest with you. I really think that, I don't know what action that the president takes that would create that, but I will say this. Because he is attacking the Republican leadership on a regular basis now, Ryan, McConnell, whoever, right? Even talking about saying he's going to run candidates in the Republican primary against sitting Republican senators. He is increasingly hated by the Republican leadership and by individual Republicans in Congress. So, I would venture to say that, I don't know what it's going to take, but if it gets to the point where he does something that, they think can trigger the impeachment, I really think that they are not so opposed to the idea anymore, because he's just constantly attacking. I mean, I can't imagine, Sheila, you were the Speaker Emeritus. I can't imagine that you as the Speaker would take, that kind of constant abuse from, anybody within your own party. You would just get to the point where you say, this person's got to go, And remember, he gets replaced by who? Pence? They don't really have a problem with that, right? We do, but they don't. So I think that it's not, it is within the realm of the possible that we get to that point.
So I think that Republicans have gone along with with this terrible agenda because they were trying to get some of their things done. But they're not getting any of their things done. In addition to not getting any of their things done, there are people in their communities that are unhappy with them. So I think it's bad enough when he continues to embarrass them the way he does and say the things that he does. They don't get any of their agenda done, and their people are rebelling. So I think it's important that the resistance movement makes friends with the people in those districts and kegels them up, so that when these guys come home, they're confronted with very unhappy constituents, because they're not going to really move on it until they're actually threatened. And so I don't know at what point that is, but when they feel threatened in terms of their being able to get reelected, that's when you're going to see some movement.
Yes, I want to ask a question. No one's raised this question. And, we also, in addition to being concerned about domestic issues, we need to be concerned about international issues as well.
That question is in the stack. Korea, please tell us.
Well, I mean, North Korea is one issue, but I am very apoplectic about the issue of Russia. I am very apoplectic about Putin. I am very apoplectic about the Trump organization, whereby he is violating the emoluments clause in the Constitution, and he is operating his businesses. I am apoplectic about lines and lines of consulate officials and ambassadors doing business at the Trump Hotel. I would like to ask our congresspeople, we have the special prosecutor. He is doing a tremendous job. Each day, as citizens, we're getting more and more information about the cozy relationship. Does it look like, as we really delve down, that the Republican leadership will then do a wake-up call and choose country over party?
First of all, we don't know how far Mueller has gotten, because he's doing an excellent job of keeping it quiet until he gathers the information and pulls the trigger, whatever that is. Thank God for the stations and for the fake news, like the New York Times and the leaders, because they're giving us information that we otherwise would not have had regarding relationships and cross-pollination between Trump and Russia. I think that we have to be careful. I want Mueller to do his job, because I think Pence is as bad as Trump is. I think he's also equally dishonest, and he's lied to us. And so I want us to, don't leave us with someone who appears to be more establishment. by getting rid of Trump and then leaving this guy sort of unscathed. When they go, I swear, I tell my husband all the time, Bill, when they take these people out of the White House in handcuffs, they're going to be telling us goodbye in Russian, because that's their native language. You know, I honestly believe that the relationships are very deep and very broad. And I even think that the Vice President knows more than he has admitted. He probably is involved more than he's admitted, but he is an ideologue. And so we're fighting someone who really doesn't have any core values. He goes from one thing to the next, and he can't get anything done through Congress. But I'm afraid that Mike Pence might be able to get some stuff done through Congress, and that stuff will be very hurtful. It'll be hurtful to us women and our right to choose first and foremost. He hates a woman's right to choose. And there will be other issues that will be just as vile for other people who are most vulnerable.
Absolutely. I just want to say, because I'm glad you raised the foreign policy defense issue, because I think it really is important. Look, the one thing that is clear is that Donald Trump is not a diplomat, does not want peace. He wants war, all right? Or he favors war, I guess I should say. And that's why you see all these efforts to, cut the State Department budget and not appoint ambassadors, because he really doesn't care about diplomacy or peace. He's all oriented towards increasing the defense budget and threatening war. And that's the danger with something like Korea, right? Because you really need to have someone who's going to play some diplomatic role with, I mean, that guy's crazy too, don't get me wrong, but with the North Korean government and try to find some way to come to an agreement, through economics or whatever. But I think one of the biggest dangers too that I see, and this is where the Republicans really don't agree with Trump, is with regard to our alliances. In other words, if you want diplomacy and you want to avoid war, you enter into these alliances like NATO, or play a major role in the UN, right, which can be a force for peace many times. And the fact that he negates all that and kind of throws our allies away and doesn't really care is a very dangerous thing, because it really means that you're not really trying to work collectively towards peace through these organizations or through these alliances, and you just want to go it alone and say, and be the tough guy and say, well, we'll have to go to war and we're going to win every war. I mean, that is something we really have to be worried about. I listened to a speech about Afghanistan the other night, and I was scared to death, I got to be honest. Because, when he was talking during the campaign, and he was right, he was saying we've got to get out of Afghanistan. And now all of a sudden he said, I was wrong, and I listened to the generals, and now we got to, toughen up and send more troops. I mean, it wasn't really clear what he was saying, because half the time we didn't understand what he's saying. But clearly he was saying we've got to be more aggressive. And that is clearly not the way to go. We've been here 16 years. We should be withdrawing, I'm not saying today, but gradually withdrawing, not going the other direction. So I do think, I do think that's an important part of this debate in terms of opposing him. I don't think the average American wants more of these wars in Afghanistan and a lot of these places that he's talking about. I really don't. I think he's on the wrong side of history.
One way that Congress did stand up to him was with the sanctions bill, thank God. The sanctions bill against Russia, Iran, and North Korea. That was like a move in the right direction. We had to celebrate it because it's so rare that we get a chance.
What else do you see that perhaps both the GOP and progressive-minded legislators could possibly work together under this administration to hold the line, to triage, it's similar to the sanctions. Is there anything else that we can be pushing or urging or to action?
Bonnie and I agree that the most likely thing would be infrastructure. So that's why when you have your Millions of Jobs coalition, you stress that. That really is the thing that would create the most jobs and get the economy moving. The problem is every pronouncement we hear from him is about how there's not going to be any federal dollars. He wants to privatize. He wants the state and local governments. Can you imagine Sheila paying for it? And so unless we get some major inclination that this is going to be federal dollars, that's going to go to the states or the towns, even if there's a match, then we're going nowhere. But I think that's the area where there's the most likelihood of cooperation and desire.
Switching, actually on infrastructure in New Jersey, we had this huge TTF bill, there, but our governor started cutting revenue left and right, both either the sales tax, gas tax, redirecting, etc. What else can we do under a future administration in the next few years in New Jersey to kind of, I guess, protect and raise the resources?
After we elect the working?
Yes. That,
Well, I'm gonna first give you my editorial on the prior question. And you asked, what can we do? New Jersey is proverbially described and defined as a blue state. Last Sunday, in New Jersey, we had Assemblyman Michael Blake with us. He's an assemblyman in New York. He is one of the vice chairs of the Democratic National Committee, and he is a pastor. And one of the things that he said as we traveled around New Jersey, and Bonnie and Frank know this more than I, the blue party, the Democratic Party, and I'm editorializing, is the party of the people in this country. But what we must do as a party is understand that we have to build a party from the bottom up.
That's right.
We must invigorate and engage people, get people back to civic engagement, and get people to once again believe that they can depend upon those they elect to embrace policy agendas that are of significance to them. That is what we have to do, not just in New Jersey, but all around the country. Because I will tell you, as an elected official, personally, I know I travel in places where working people have kind of come to a conclusion that we don't care about them. That we are elected people, that we are in a bubble of our own, and that once they cast that vote for us and have faith and trust that we're going to represent their interests, they do not. We are not going to be able to continue a resistance movement until we build a political party of inclusion.
I want to thank you for hitting that note. A few questions were about how the Democratic Party can communicate with voters, communicate with independents or even Republicans to let them know that our agenda is an agenda of the people and for the people. Is there anything you want to add, advise, etc.?
Well, yeah, but maybe not what you want to do. You know, the Democrats are spending a lot of time and efforts to get our message together. I think we're missing the ball because we're not talking about values. We need to talk about what people care about. We need for them to understand this is very personal when I say that I believe that you should have access to your right to choose. And it's very important when I say to you, you need to be able to have a working, not a minimum wage, a living wage, and you ought to have safety and security in the environment, and you ought to be able to live in safe communities. We have got to talk about values, and we have got to talk about that in a very intimate way. And then Democrats cannot equivocate. We've had some experiences with some equivocation from time to time where we've not been as progressive as we should have been. Well, you know what? Maybe this was the lesson that we needed to learn. Maybe God sent this to us because He needed us to find our moral center as well. Because our moral center as Democrats is to the left. It is as progressives. Because we care about those who are the least among us, and we want fairness in every aspect of our experience.
I think what Bonnie was referencing, that I was going to talk to you about our latest message proposal. But I'm going to tell you anyway, because it's evolving and you should know if you don't already. After the last election, there were a lot within the Democratic caucus, a lot of members within the Democratic caucus, who really felt their major concern was the Rust Belt. In other words, that we lost the Rust Belt, right, from Pennsylvania to Michigan, Minnesota, and that we didn't have an economic message that people heard or understood. And so, in an effort to develop a message, which is developing, this isn't the final word, but over the last 6 months we had this Democratic Policy Committee that basically started to develop a message, and they unveiled it at the end of July, just before we left. And the standard, the simple message is better deal, better jobs, better wages, better future. And it's all economic, right? So of course it includes a lot of the things that we've been talking, all of you have been talking about for years, like the $15 minimum wage, equal pay for equal work, paid family leave, many things we've been talking about long. But it also goes into a lot of other things, and it's still general, it's still not, detailed. But it also goes into a lot of other things. A lot of it came, to be honest, from the building trades, okay? And it talks about major infrastructure initiative. It also talks about, how do we have a national policy that encourages manufacturing and bringing jobs back here. Some of the things Sheila said earlier about the tax structure and bringing back from overseas is part of it. It also talks about, national apprenticeship programs, funding for job training, and trying to sort of focus on where the jobs are in the future. So a lot of it talks about the innovation agenda through new technologies. And, how can we build jobs with new technologies, renewable resources, wind power, solar panels, that type of thing. I could go on forever, and I'm not. But I mean, that I think we're conscious of the fact that we have to primarily focus on an economic agenda, and that to some extent it's trying to bring back the people that we lost in the Rust Belt, many of whom were union members. And I know, what did you say, Hetty? I know. I mean, I knew that Hetty, look, I'm not disagreeing with you that it focuses primarily on what Hetty suggested. But I just thought I needed to throw it out, right?
So you see that there is debate and discussion among where we should go and the direction in which we should go. I think it's vitally important, therefore, that groups like you are very engaged in building this party and recruiting people to this party and getting people to vote, to register to vote. Because at the end of the day, I believe that we don't want people to be confused when we ask them to support us because we're one thing versus another. So I'm not into the very long, wordy messages and what have you. I want to talk about the fact that, hey, this is America and you should have the right to be and do anything you want and do and be as long as it is legal because this is America. You're no better than me and I'm no better than you. So if you're a woman, if you're a minority, if you're a religious minority, if you are disabled, whatever the situation is, you are supposed to have a level playing field in this country. And where you don't have that level playing field, that's where government comes in to ensure that your bottom line is something that you can live comfortably with and live safely with. That's who I am, and that's who Democrats are.
So we're coming to the tail end. There were several questions about the environment, everything from what does it mean, or FERC now has a quorum, and what does it mean for pipeline expansion in New Jersey? How do we fight against fossil fuel and create more clean energy? What do we do about the gutting of clean air and clean water protections? I mean, there's a lot, and I have a whole stack, and this has been very informative, and thank you. Just want to squeeze in some time on environmental issues because there's a lot here.
So that's a big issue, and there was a presser today with the environmentalists on the way that they've been, the way this budget is being, the proposed reduction to this budget. So the budget is proposed to be reduced by 30%. The kind of grants to states is like 36%. The R&D is like 40-some%. And the enforcement is like 50%. So they don't really care about these things. FERC is like another illustration of what they don't care about. We in New Jersey, including the DEP, stood up to FERC, stood up to the pipeline, the Penny's pipeline, because it didn't do the things it needed to do to ensure that this pipeline was moving where it should be. Now, the president has done an executive order that has changed that all around, and there's legislation in place that will give FERC authority to do things like do aerials to see whether or not a pipeline is appropriately being suggested. Don't care about the rights of people. And so I know that New Jersey's still going to fight as hard as it can, but when you do federal law and you usurp the state's rights, which is things that they try to do all the time down there now, they know what they're doing, including, which is not about the environment, but it is about safety and security. They want to usurp state laws on carrying and concealing a weapon and buying a silencer. MacArthur, you know, MacArthur's also responsible for the amendments to the Affordable Care Act. I just want to put that in there. But this administration is doing as much as it can through executive order to turn back the kinds of accomplishments to keep water clean, to keep air clean, to ensure that there's no runoff where there shouldn't be, to make sure that chemicals, that there's testing for chemicals and things of that nature. So what do we have to do? We got to stay engaged. We got to do what we had to do in 2017, make New Jersey strong again, and then we got to do what we had to do in 2018, make this Congress strong again, and we can't, you just got to keep building. I know I sound like a broken record. Bring 5 people with you. Convince 5 more people. And look around and increase the diversity here. Because we need you. You can't be everywhere all the time, so recruit people sometime that can stand in your stead as well. I thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, because if not for you, we would be in the worst shape. So you all are the difference. You're the difference here in New Jersey. You're the difference in other states that are doing the same thing. It is the people that are showing up that are making the difference.
But I have to say, the last time that Bonnie and I were at a town meeting or forum like this was a few weeks ago. It was only 1 week ago, when the families of the National Guards asked to have a forum, and it was going to be with MacArthur, and we agreed to do it because, you know, we figured these families have a lot of concerns. They're, you know, the breadwinners, you know, overseas and all the problems. So we said, sure. But then we get there, and the first question was about this concealed weapons. I don't, bill. So basically what MacArthur has is a federal bill that says that if you get a permit to carry a concealed weapon in any state, you can take that concealed weapon and use it in a state that wouldn't give you the permit, right? So you could do whatever you want in New Jersey to protect us, gun safety. But if you get that concealed weapon permit in Florida, you can bring it into New Jersey. And you know, I mean, all I kept thinking, I mean, I know it sounds, I'm not, you know, I'm a big gun safety advocate, but to me, like, that's like the worst possible thing. I mean, you know, remember in the Old West, like if you wanted to carry your gun, you had to carry it openly because you were like a man, macho, that you carried the gun and you could see it. And now these guys want to carry concealed weapons that you don't even know what they got. I mean, to me, it was just unbelievable. But anyway, I'm sorry, that was an aside. We went, and we spent our time. Going back to the question, I think the biggest thing that Trump uses, and I think you can all play a role in debunking this, is the idea that jobs and environment are mutually exclusive, right? That's what he says over and over again, that, we don't want the EPA, we gotta cut back on the staff because they're killing jobs. We don't want renewables because, coal creates jobs, whatever. And I think you really gotta push back. Every time we do an environmental press event or talk, I just push back and I say, absolutely, that is totally not true. Now, it's very easy for me because I'm, from the shore, right? And when the beaches are closed and there's pollution in the water, the tourism industry is dead and everybody loses their job, right? So that's obvious. But, you can use it in any situation. Like a lot of people, still think about fossil fuels. They want to, use coal, they want to continue to pollute, whatever. And they don't realize that there's very little future in terms of jobs there. Coal is being phased out, first because they have automated the process through strip mining, and secondly because natural gas is so cheap, it's not competitive anymore. But on the other hand, renewables create all kinds of opportunities, right? Building the solar panels, building the wind panels, installing them. I mean, these are all very good jobs. And so today, we were at Amazon, I don't know if they're in Carteret, in my district, and they put the biggest solar panel field on their roof in the entire country. And so I went to, say how great this was. And so I think that's what you have to do. You have to say, look, it's just the opposite. We want to create jobs. Good environment and good jobs go together. And that is the future. That's the only way that New Jersey is going to be competitive, is by moving not only towards more solar and wind, but also even manufacturing the products, because they're manufacturing them in China, and we're getting to have less and less of the market. So, I mean, just as a general thing, I think you can play a major role in really stressing that.
So, we're coming to the end. I want to just highlight some actions that I heard from the members of Congress and from our Speaker Emeritus. Helping register people to vote, getting new voters on those rolls is critical, is important. It's something that organizations like New Jersey Working Families are focused on. We're going to be tabling at different events. When you see us, please come over, say hello. Volunteer when you can, show up to events, but I have to tell you, we look for $3, $5 sustaining memberships. If you can afford a cup of coffee or the cost of a cup of coffee to sustain the movement and to make events like this happen, please make that donation. $3 and $5 sustaining memberships is what keeps our organization fighting and calling the question on Democrats and Republicans and everyone alike. I want to say that. So please, brothers and sisters. Hetty had mentioned we have town halls that we are putting together with partner organizations, with Action Together, with Blue Wave New Jersey, with CWA, with New Jersey Resistance, with a bunch of environmental social justice partners. Our aim is to have a town hall in every legislative district so that we can ask candidates and incumbents alike, what are you going to do to protect our state, to move the ball forward, to not just do triage, to support workers and their families? You can help us do this. There's no way, by the way, New Jersey Working Families is a staff of 4 people. I don't know if you know that. We cannot do 40 town halls on our own. We will try though. But if you help us, if you sign up, you show up, all you have to do is maybe open a door, set some seats, maybe hand out some flyers. It's not that hard. You can help us carry out a big objective, which is a progressive agenda under the next administration that I know this lady up in front is going to be colored. We made mention of a Million Jobs Coalition. Infrastructure, 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 infrastructure. That is going to be the next game. So we need you to go to your legislator, to your member of Congress and say, you need to sign on to this. I need you to sign on to this. We said we've reached out to Democrats. We need you to urge the Republican members to get on. And the only way they'll support an infrastructure bill is if it has those core principles that are important to working families. It's 1 million jobs. You have flyers right in front. And the last big thing is that we have actions that are coming up to support, to expand, to raise our voices. One of them is on September 4th. On Labor Day, we're mobilizing in support of workers, raising the wage, expanding earned sick days, ensuring pay equity in our state. I can't believe I have to talk about this in 2017, pay equities. But we need you to show up. This is one event that we need you to show up at Washington Park in Newark. There is also a rally in Asbury Park on Monday, September 4th at 10 a.m. on Springwood Park. That is again, on Labor Day. It's a rally against racism. These are going to be going on, particularly because there are rallies to, essentially, white supremacist rallies that are being planned around the same time that we need to counter, brothers and sisters. And so if you're able to show up, the best way to get all of this information, however, is to go, if you're on Facebook, like New Jersey Working Families Alliance, and then you'll see our posts. You could share, you could text RESIST, RESIST, to 31996, and you will get action alerts on your phone. Again, the number is 31996. It's a text message, and you'll get all of this information. And we'll sign you up. All you have to do is text RESIST. And then I think the last thing that we want to do is we want to support legislators who are building the legislative resistance, this resistance coalition, which Shiela heads in the Assembly. We need more members. So I need you to reach out to your member of Assembly, preferably when you show up to our town hall, and tell them they need to be part of that. I know it's a lot of work, but we are the Army. No one else is coming.
There's no justice, just us.
Exactly. There's no justice, just us. So I want to thank Congressman Frank Pallone. Bonnie, I'ma tell you the truth, Watson Coleman. And Shiela fired up Oliver. We promise we will do this again. We'll have teletown halls. I'm just committing you already. I'm volunteering you. Please join us again. On the phone, we'll have some additional teletown halls. And when you're back on another recess back home, if you could join us. When you're helping redirect the state, if we could have these again, because there's urgency and there's a thirst for information. Any parting words, Mr. All right, Congressman Frank Expedition. All right, I'm gonna tell you the truth and fire it up. Thank you, brothers and sisters.